Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. FPL Vincenzo here, and a slightly different pod to what we've been used to doing in the last couple of weeks. For myself, it's one of the worst game weeks I've had for quite a long time. Game week 2 there's no better word to describe it really other than a complete disaster. My game week rank was very close to 10 million. And so I've been playing the game a long time, and I don't remember a time when it's been quite this bad. Game week 1 wasn't incredible either. It was fine, average. So my overall rank now after 2 game weeks is about 6 million, which is, again, in terms of, I don't remember ever being this low. So a little bit of a new experience for me. May not be a new experience for those listening. You may have found yourself in this position before. But I wanted to have a little talk really today around how we react to this, what decisions we make now moving forward, and kind of what's going around in my head at the moment based on what's just happened, what I've seen in the last 2 weeks, what I'm thinking now moving forward, and obviously temptations to do things a bit differently. We start obviously ahead of game week 1 with a plan. I hope we do. I had plans around when I wanted to make transfers, when I wanted to play various chips. I think there's an awareness that that's flexible and unforeseen injuries and things can change plans. But do we sort of put into place bad game weeks, changing plans? I never really planned to have a bad game week, so I don't really have that contingency in place. So I'm kind of in a bit of a random position, should we say here. So I thought I'd just sort of have an open discussion on this pod about what I'm thinking currently about my team, run through my thought process and see where I end up sort of at the end of it. So if I jump ahead to roughly what the disaster was in game week, so I'm not usually one to share my team and look back at the previous game week because no one's really interested in that. But it was a 34-point week for me. The 6 attackers all didn't return, so Haaland captain got me 4 points. Evan Nilsson, Watkins, Bruno Fernandes, Elliot Anderson, Morgan Rogers all got 2 each. Cole Palmer didn't play. Him not playing actually got Pedro Porro off the bench for 5 points, my highest outfield player of the week. A little bit of DEFCON for Lacroix and Joachim Anderson, Milenkovic 2 again, Petrovic clean sheet in goal. So immediate thought is that's really bad. But then you look at the players who did return and you think, how many of them were there? Joel Pedro obviously did very well in the Chelsea-West Ham game. There were a few others. But I don't think it was a crazy high week for many. Maybe some that had Gyökeres did well. Some that had Joel Pedro did well. But of the other, what I would say, popular players, it didn't feel like a crazy high game week. And if I look in a bit more detail around my disaster, because I'd say on the surface it looks awful, but then you go digging around for sort of crumbs of comfort, shall we say. And I looked at XGI for this week in the data. So expecting goal involvement. And of the top 15 players, 11 got a return. Only 4 didn't. 2 of them I had. So Bruno Fernandes was 5th for XGI, no doubt helped by having a penalty. And Erling Haaland was 10th, and I'd captained him. So a little bit of bad variance and bad luck there that, I say, if you own 2 of the top 15 players in a game week for XGI, and 11 of those 15 get a return, you would hope that at least one of your 2 are in that 11 out of the 15. Both of my 2 missed out. I look at Ollie Watkins in the Aston Villa loss to Brentford, and he had 4 shots in the game, all in the box. That's the most in this game week. No player had more shots in the box than Ollie Watkins is 4, so he's getting into good positions, having shots from good positions. Maybe a little bit of bad luck there, bad variance that one of those didn't go in. Look at the minutes of my players. All of my players played 90 minutes this week, apart from Evan Nilsson, who played 88 in Bournemouth's 1-0 win. So again, minutes were good. So, and this is, again, I've got to remind myself here why I picked certain players. When I got into game week 1, sort of the final hours before the deadline. I had a few sort of 50-50 calls. Morgan Rogers perhaps being the biggest one. I was stuck between him, Ismail Assar, who obviously scored this week, Cody Gakpo, who's had a very good start in both the first 2 weeks, and Mohamed Kudus. They were the 4 players I was considering for that spot. So Gakpo's got returns in both games. Kudus got 2 assists in game week 1. Ismail Assar has scored this week. Morgan Rogers has got nothing. So bad luck, bad variance, bad decision making, whichever way you want to look at it. But my decision was Rogers had the better fixtures for a longer period, and he was nailed. That was the reason I picked him, and the fixtures are still good, and he's still nailed. So you have to look and remember why you pick these players. You can look at the bad outcomes, bad variance, bad luck, however you want to look at it. But remember why you pick players. Did you pick players in a punt spot and the punts backfired? My strategy going into game week 1 was basically safety. I really wanted to get to game week 5 without using a transfer. I planned to use the free hit game week 4. I really wanted to roll through the opening 3 weeks unless I got an injury. And so I wanted reliable minutes players, not players who were going to potentially give me a headache, which is ultimately what I decided with Gakpo and what I decided with Kudus. I wasn't quite sure where I stood with those 2 in particular. And Rogers had better fixtures than Sarr over the first 7. Evan Nilsson, a bit the same. I had other options in that spot. Mateta was 1. Strand Larson was 1. But ultimately, I looked at minutes. And Evan Nilsson's still playing quite a lot of minutes. And his team is still doing quite well. Just unfortunately, Semenyo's getting all the returns and not Evan Nilsson. So good team, wrong player. Can happen. And I think that's the sort of the first thought that's coming into my head here, that it's not always going to go well. There will be game weeks in a season where things don't go to plan. I finished like 3K last year. I had 3 or 4 particularly bad game weeks, maybe not quite to this level of a game week rank of close to 10 million. It's on the screen there, 9.7 million, the game week rank. But I had 3 or 4 where it was over 7 million, maybe 8 million, and plenty that were under 1 million. And last year I was quite lucky in the sense that I didn't really have too many bad game weeks early on. I think up until about game week 15, everything was pretty average, maybe 1 bad one. So there wasn't a lot to be disappointed, upset, frustrated about. And it was always, there was enough good there to cover the bad. This week, this season, the bads come first. So what I'm trying to remind myself here is not to overreact. It's 1 bad game week. The players I've picked are all playing. That's a good start. They're all, in their own ways, showing promise and delivering what I expected them to do, which in many cases was minutes. And I ask myself as well right now, because the temptation would be, do I pull the wild card out here? Because obviously a bad game week, that's the easy way to correct things. But so I look at this team and I think the back 4 are not too bad. They're all, say, playing and still have opportunity. And it's not like I was picking someone for 2 weeks where I thought the first 2 fixtures were good and then what came afterwards wasn't. They've all still got decent fixtures moving forward. And how much bad variance have I had here? I've had Bruno Fernandes and Elliot Anderson in midfield, but I've had Bruno miss a penalty. I've had Bruno and Anderson be very close to DEFCON and not get any. So I've had Evan Nilsson playing centre forward and one of the midfielders for the same team getting all the returns. I've had Cole Palmer get injured in his team in the warm-up and his team scores 5 goals. There's an element of bad luck in there. I don't necessarily look at this team and think I made dreadful choices. And I think it's key not to overreact is the main thing. So what I'm going to do now is look at sort of all of my players individually. And what I've done over a couple of seasons, we talked about this when I used to pod with Man On last year, is talk about a traffic light system. So put players at green, amber or red based on sort of an honest assessment on whether you need to move them on or not. With red being normally injuries, terrible data, terrible form, bad minutes, all these sort of things. Amber, maybe not delivering what you was expecting, and green, doing fine. And that's what I thought I would do here as a way of sort of breaking down my current squad and my current thought process around all of my individual players. And maybe you might want to do the same for your team if your start hasn't been sort of as expected. And really assess how your team is performing in terms of expectation, and ask yourself some questions. Is there players I desperately want in these positions instead? And is it worth sort of tearing up my preseason plans to change into something now which might then upset future plans? So let's look through this. I've got Petrovic and Dubravka are my two keepers I went with. On the traffic light system, I put them both at green. They're both on 8 points so far, 1 clean sheet each. Petrovic not doing too bad with 7 saves so far. I didn't want to spend too much on my goalkeepers. I thought 8.5 was fine. And the plan was just to play Petrovic every week. Dubravka was there if urgently needed. And I can't really quibble with Petrovic so far. I say amongst the 4.5 keepers, he's made the most saves. And in terms of sort of top up FPL points, he's got the most save points so far at his price point. And I say he's got 8 points from 2 games. Was a bit unlucky in a game against Liverpool, perhaps, to concede 4. Recovered a little bit, obviously, this week with a clean sheet. So he's averaging 4 points per start so far. If I played Petrovic over the course of the season, averaging 4 points per start, he's going to get 38 times 4. He's going to get 152 points. I think that's more than acceptable from a 4.5 million keeper. If he's going to go through a phase of delivering clean sheets every other week, I think that's more than acceptable. And he is capable of making saves and capable of getting some save points, which is also what you want from your budget keepers. So I can't really argue with this so far. Clearly, there's other keepers that have got more points. Jordan Pickford's got 15 in 1 game. David Raya's got 2 clean sheets so far. Vicario's got 2 clean sheets so far. But that's not sustainable, keeping a clean sheet every game week. Penalty saves are not going to happen too often either. I think if you're looking for what can be continued and what can be expected moving forward, I think Petrovic making a couple of saves a game, picking up a save point most weeks, getting a clean sheet, sort of 1 in 3, something like that would be more than a fair return. So I think he's pacing on plan with expectation. Bournemouth's fixtures are still fairly tidy moving forward. So no panic here. And if I played the wild card this week, would there be a different goalkeeper I'd pick? I can't say there definitely would right now. So you can look at more expensive keepers, particularly Raya, and think, that's good. He's doing very well. But do I want to spend 5.5 on a keeper? I think there is a valid argument this year based on how the season started that you might want to, because most of the premium players aren't delivering. Salah's data's been fairly underwhelming. Palmer and Saka are now injured. We'll get to Haaland later because he's in my team. But it clearly is opportunities here to bolster certain positions, or maybe spending 5.5 for a keeper is fair. But I'm still happy enough with Petrovic so far, and Dubravka doing his job as the backup here. 4 million playing goalkeeper. Quite sort of a good thing as well that they've managed to keep a clean sheet in a home game, Burnley. So they're at least capable of defending well in games. So if he was called upon, maybe he can do a job for 1 game week or so. So yeah, no concerns with these 2 keepers. On to my 5 defenders, and in price order they're on the screen. So 4 of them I've put green as traffic lights, 1 as amber as a talking point to move forward. So we've got Pedro Porro first, who was picked as my, shall we say, attacking defender. Hasn't got any attacking returns yet, but he has got 2 clean sheets. So you can't really ask for more than that. That's the bread and butter of points for defensive assets, the clean sheets first. Porro's got a 6 and a 5 for his 2 clean sheets. Late yellow card against Man City was frustrating. But 11 points from 2 games is more than reasonable. And you hope that if he continues to take some set pieces, which he is, then there's more chances for attacking contributions as well. So if anything, probably a slight overperformance from him so far with Tottenham's defence doing so well. He was one of those that when I picked my team in game week 1, I was thinking he might be one to move on fairly early. He was probably earmarked as one of my earlier likely transfers, but no urge to do that now, particularly with the 6 million defenders in a bit of turmoil. Obviously, Nouri's injured, Frimpong's injured. for now. Kukurea perhaps playing a more defensive role because of Levi Colwell's injury. Maybe they're using him as a bit more of a forward passer from deeper positions with the left foot. They don't really have anyone else to do that. That obviously makes him less of an asset at 6 million. So unless you're going to go to the Arsenal defenders who have got 2 clean sheets and have not the best run of fixtures coming up, no need to move Porro on. He's doing fine. And you hope that when the clean sheets dry up for him, maybe he'll chip in with the odd attacking return to sort of continue this sort of rate of points return. Again, if I got 4 or 5 points a game off of him throughout the season, I'd be more than happy with that. Milenkovic is next, and that's how I put him amber. 5.5 million. He was meant to be sort of a safe DEFCON pick. You knew at the start of the season there was a couple of teams based on last season where the defenders were getting DEFCON regularly. James Tarkowski was one, and he's got DEFCON in both Everton games so far. The Forest guys were doing very well for it as well, Murillo and Milenkovic. I picked Milenkovic because he had a bit more goal threat. Unfortunately, so far he hasn't got any DEFCON points. You need 10 from a defender to get the extra 2 points. He's got 8 and 7 in Nottingham Forest's first 2 games, and they haven't managed to keep a clean sheet in either. So he's got a bare minimum of 2 points in both games. Again, not a reason to panic. 2-game sample isn't loads to make a clear decision on whether he's going to be a DEFCON monster again, or whether there is enough of a change in the way Forest are playing. They've obviously made a few new signings, things like that. Is there possibilities here Forest might adapt a little bit, might change a little bit, and they won't become so defensively resilient? They won't keep as many clean sheets, or they won't rely on these centre-backs in the deep block doing loads of clearances and tackling. It's possible. So I put him on amber because I think he's a logical potential move to an Arsenal defender soon. Arsenal's fixtures for the first 6 weeks weren't incredible. And I think sort of game week 7, game week 8 sort of time, there was a really big swing for Arsenal's defenders in terms of an improvement in fixtures. Let's see where Milenkovic stands at that point. Again, no major rush to move. He was bought for a reason. Forest fixtures for the first block were quite tidy. We expected him to get DEFCON. He's got 8 and 7 instead of 10 so far. So it's not like he's getting 2s and 3s. He's getting up near the DEFCON threshold to get those 2 extra points. I'm still confident in a couple of games coming up, he'll give me an 8-pointer. He'll get the 2 DEFCON points to go with the 6 for a clean sheet. So he's one to monitor, but not one to rush into selling. And I say I think Arsenal's fixtures, when they improve, you'll want a piece of that. If his numbers don't improve and there's no massive sort of positive impact on his points, he can go to the Arsenal at that point. But I don't think I need to rush him out before that to a Tarkowski who's getting better DEFCON contributions, for example. Next at 5 million, I picked Lacroix, who's been perfect so far. DEFCON in both Crystal Palace's games. Also got a clean sheet sort of unexpectedly against Chelsea. Crystal Palace doing what Crystal Palace do, being defensively resilient, hard to break down, hard to beat. Really glad I picked him as my sort of permanent third defender. And that's how I was going to set this team up. Milenkovic and Lacroix were meant to play every game. Porro as the attacking defender would play the majority. And if I felt like from an attacking point of view, the game didn't offer very much, it's possible I would bench him for Joachim Andersen, who was my 4th defender, which is what I did this week. So I played Joachim Andersen against Man United. I thought Andersen's potential for a clean sheet was higher than Porro's. Obviously, didn't work out that way, but that's what I thought. And I thought Andersen's likeliness to get DEFCON points was higher, which he did get. I obviously ended up getting Porro as well because Cole Palmer's injury, so I ended up playing both. But my rationale was there. And there might be a couple of other games coming up where I look at the fixture for Porro and think, I'm not sure about this from a clean sheet perspective, not sure about this from an attacking perspective. If Andersen's got a playable fixture that week, I'll play him again. But he's done his job so far, Joachim Andersen. Got a DEFCON point, 2 DEFCON points when I needed him to play. He's getting regular minutes. Fulham's defence looks tidy enough right now that he's just a nice 4th defender, someone nice 1st or 2nd on the bench that can come on and pick up 3 or 4 points in the weeks I rely on him. And he done that this week for me, so no issues with him. Last defender is Bijol at Leeds. We haven't seen in a league game yet. Did play in the League Cup when Leeds lost on penalties to Sheffield Wednesday. So maybe that might be the start of him getting more regular minutes. Obviously, Leeds just lost 5-0 to Arsenal. Could that mean a shake-up of their defence? I think Bajol was bought to be a first-team starter. So, again, no concerns. I could have had Estev or someone like that, but I think this guy, Bajol's ceiling's higher. We haven't seen any minutes from him in the league yet, but again, he's there as the third sub every week, basically. I've got no big urge to play him. Don't need to move him on. So, as a 5 here, I haven't got loads of points so far from these defenders. It's not like I'm getting the points that Timber Calafiori are getting, people like that. But, say, Porro ticking along nicely, Lacroix ticking along nicely, Anderson doing his job. It's just Milenkovic, really. If he'd have got one clean sheet in the first 2 or a couple of DEFCON points, I probably wouldn't be that concerned about him. And again, you have to look at it, 2-game sample. Let's give him another 2 or 3 games and then see if this is a pattern where he's still not getting DEFCON. Forest are still conceding goals. And at that point, we view it as an issue. Right now, it's a frustration more than an issue. But we shouldn't overreact based on 2 weeks. So we'll monitor that. And likely now, he's, as I say, the player most likely to move to an Arsenal defender at some point, but we don't need to rush into that. Into midfield, and I think this is where I've arguably had the biggest disappointment so far. So the plan was to play Cole Palmer, Bruno Fernandes, Morgan Rogers, Elliot Anderson, those 4 every week. And then Dewsbury Hall was there basically as the 8th attacker, permanent first sub. All I've got so far from those 4 midfielders who I keep playing is 1 Elliot Anderson assist. Nothing out of Palmer, nothing out of Bruno, nothing out of Rogers. And so it's easy to look at this now and think, oh, Rogers is price point, Semenyo's delivering. I was very, very close, for those that watched my Liverpool video before game week 1, to picking Cody Gakpo. And ultimately, I got a bit concerned about his minutes. Obviously, the Isak transfer at that point, we weren't sure where it was heading. I just thought Gakpo was going to be a problem waiting to happen. I thought he might do something against against Bournemouth in game week 1. I wasn't then expecting him to then go and get 2 assists in the Newcastle game as well. So big swings there. But again, I'm getting the minutes. And that's how I viewed this so far. All of my Bruno Rogers and Elliot Anderson have all played 180 minutes so far. That gives them the best capabilities of getting DEFCON, obviously more minutes to get attacking returns, where other players I was considering, particularly Gakpo, particularly Kudus, I was thinking you might be rife for a 65th minute, 70th minute sub. Even a pre-60 minute sub wasn't impossible. Did I want those sort of headaches? So I went for minutes starters rather than minutes risks. And in that sense, I'm getting what I wanted. They've all played all the games. Palmer would have started against West Ham as well if he didn't hurt his groin in the warm-up. So is this, again, have I just been a bit unlucky here? Because if you look at the top 25 midfielders in the game so far for points, none of my 5 are in there. I say Bruno and Elliot Anderson have been very close to DEFCON in both games, haven't got them. Morgan Rogers was picked for fixtures up until game week 7. So I need to give that time for him to play what might be easier opposition. So again, I don't need to panic here. It's very easy to think there's issues here. You can look at Elliot Anderson's price point, and obviously people like Reinders started at that price. You might want to make that move and cost you a little bit more now, but he's got a return. You look at, I say, Semenyo doing way better than Rogers at that price point. But my guys aren't doing necessarily loads wrong. The data is not awful. It's not particularly in the case of Morgan Rogers, hasn't been incredible so far. But I've bought him for 7 game weeks. You should ask yourself questions like before the season starts. If he blanks in the first 2, what am I going to do? Am I going to rush to move him on? Because he is playing a lot of minutes in a high attacking position for a team historically who have done well scoring goals. They've struggled in the first 2 game weeks, but do we need to give him more time when the fixture list maybe, or the fixtures get a little bit better? I think I'm prepared to sit on him for a little bit longer. The only one of these I've put red on a traffic light system is Cole Palmer. Obviously, we've got this groin injury. His injury record extends back to last season. It sounds like from quotes from Enzo Maresca that he wasn't necessarily fully fit going into game week 1. Is he just going to be one of those players now who's a constant injury concern? I think he probably is. And that makes me, I think, probably slightly keen to move him on this week. So obviously at that price point, I've got basically the whole game to pick from apart from Mo Salah. Saka being injured means I'm not going to make that move to him, which would have been a logical one based on price points. So is there opportunity to move Cole Palmer on to someone else? I'm looking at Ismail Assar, for example, who's got I looked at ahead of game week 1. In my very first pod of the year, I highlighted him as someone that was constantly going to be a goal threat, running in behind, things like that. And the next 3 weeks, they've got Villa, who he scored against numerous times before, did well against us in the league last year, did well against us in the FA Cup semi-final. This is now 2 teams with the same managers who play the same way. So nothing in that suggests that he can't do damage again. And then he goes on to play Sunderland, who have just lost to Burnley, who a lot of people think might end the season as the worst team in the league. And then he plays West Ham, who at the moment look like the worst defence so far. We're absolutely awful in the game against Chelsea. So the next 3 fixtures is a fixture that he historically has done well in, and nothing has changed this year to make me think that he won't do well again. And then he's playing against 2, which could be quite ropey defences. It's there for him, Ismail Assar, for the next 3 weeks. So I'm edging towards doing that right now. Palmer to Sarr this week. A lot of money in the bank then. But again, I'll just leave it there because I'm not busting to move any of these other players on right now. We'll let Bruno carry on getting close to DEFCON. See if he can get the odd attack in return. Maybe score the next penalty he takes. Rodgers, say, still playing good minutes. The fixtures are still there. Elliot Anderson doing fine, 8 points from 2 games, 4 points a game. A bit like what I said about Petrovic, would have been fine at the end of the year. And Dewsbury Hall's playing minutes as well as my 8th attacker should I need him. The temptation here is probably to go chasing the fixtures and think I'll get a Man United player in here. You've got Cunha and Mbeumo. They're closer in price to Cole Palmer. People don't like having loads of money sat in the bank. But have I really seen enough from Man United in these first 2 weeks that I trust them at the moment? I don't trust them any more than Morgan Rodgers to get returns, if I'm being honest, right now. So, and do I really want 2 Man United midfielders moving forward for these next fixtures? Not particularly. I think Mbeumo could be quite good over this season, particularly. But I haven't seen enough in the first 2 game weeks to make me think I really need to get him in because they've got Burnley. Burnley keeping a clean sheet is maybe consider their defence a bit better. Man United's attack was, I thought, fairly weak against Fulham. I don't think Mbeumo managed a shot in the whole game. Do I really trust any more against that Burnley defence? Not really. He could do very well, and I wouldn't hate having him. If I was on a free hit, I'd probably risk him. But yeah, I've not seen enough from him to make me want to get him from Cole Palmer. I've got a bit more faith in Ismail Assar right now in that Palace system than I have in Brian Mbeumo in Man United. So he's my preference. And at the moment, I'd probably go ahead and do that this week because I've got an injured player. And that's enough, I think, for me to warrant red on the traffic light system. Even though I think the latest quotes from Maresca is the injury isn't too bad. I think the expectation is he might even be back after the international break. So he might only miss 1 game week, maybe 2 at most. But so just this injury record now, do I really want to persevere with him? I think it is enough there to want to move him on. Then on to the strikers. And again, things haven't been particularly good here, particularly in the case of Watkins and Evanilson, 4 and 3 points respectively for their 9 and 7 million in cost. Haaland on 15 points did well for me with the captaincy in game week 1. Not so well in game week 2, but he had quite a good XGI in game week 2, so maybe unlucky not to get something in that game. So I've put on the screen right now sort of XGI through the first 2 weeks amongst strikers, and Haaland is way ahead, 2.76. That's over 1 better than anyone else. So I do think he's the best striker to own. You pay 14 million or 14.1 currently for it, but his data is superior to everyone else's, even those that maybe seemingly doing better than him, someone like Ekatike, someone like that. And there is still a thing with me that Haaland's data is way better than Salah's. I know Salah's got a return in both games, both in second half injury time. But I'd say both the games so far for Salah, I feel like he's been on the periphery of the game, not the Salah that is promising big hauls. And I'm still quite happy to have Haaland more than Salah. I think those that have got Salah will carry on thinking that he's ticking along, he's getting them points, they'll hold. I'm still thinking this run is unlikely to carry on. He can't keep sort of robbing these late returns. The data doesn't really back up that he's going to improve in any way in terms of these returns. For 0.4, 0.5 cheaper, I think Haaland's output capability is much higher than Salah's right now. So I'm happy to have Haaland still. The other two, say Watkins and Evan Nilsson, there are temptations to want to move them on. I say Gyökeres is the same price as Watkins, just scored 2 goals. But as I say, this game week he had most shots in the box of anyone, and his XGI is not the worst. 0.59 is only marginally worse than Joel Pedro, who's obviously just got a 15-pointer. So people wouldn't have a problem bringing Joel Pedro in this week, even though his underlying data is basically the same as Ollie Watkins. So do I really need to move Watkins on? No, I don't think so. I say I bought him and Rodgers because Villa had good fixtures till 7. It's not like there's a striker tearing the league apart right now I need to get to, and Watkins is the make weight because of the price. I haven't seen enough from Gyökeres either in 2 games to make me desperately want him right now. Arsenal's fixtures are much better. So we'll sit with Watkins for now and hope that some of this underlying data and these shots lead to a few more goals. So Evan Nilsson, I would be open-minded to moving on because clearly right now he's getting massively outperformed by Semenyo in the same team. But is that likely to carry on? He's a little bit of a worry, Evan Nilsson. So he's only had 3 shots so far in 2 game weeks, which isn't particularly high. A 0.32 XGI across 2 games isn't particularly high. He was averaging 0.5 per game last year, which is one of the reasons why I wanted him. So is he just a slow starter? Are Bournemouth not playing to his strengths anymore? Because they have good fixtures, I say I'm prepared to wait and see. The reason I picked both of these 2 was because the fixtures were there for a longer period. Again, it's not a desperation right now to move Evan Nilsson to a similar striker around his price. Sure, Chris Wood could do well for the next batch. Richarlison's obviously started the season quite well, albeit how long is he going to carry on starting for with Solanke there? Mateta could be quite a good pickup for this next run. I've just mentioned Ismail Assar having these 3 nice fixtures against Aston Villa, against Sunderland, and against West Ham. Wouldn't hurt me maybe to use 2 transfers this week and move Evan Nilsson to Mateta and move Palmer to Sarr and be really aggressive in targeting that fixture run. But I still feel like rolling transfers and keeping transfers back right now is the best strategy unless you're dealing with a problem. Evan Nilsson's getting good minutes. He's in a team scoring goals. He's in a team with good fixtures. And he's a centre forward. Not a massive problem right now, the fact he hasn't scored in 2 game weeks. So, again, do I need to overreact here? So just a little bit of a recap really here on my current thought process. I've played poker quite a lot in my time. And there's a phrase within poker for those that don't play that's called playing on tilt. So if you lose a big hand, if you invest a lot of your chips into one hand and lose, you then start to basically panic and it becomes sort of an urgent need to try and get all those chips back that you've just lost. And it's never really seemed to be a good way to play because you're not playing with the right attitude. You're playing too loose. Your headspace, you're not in the right headspace basically. And so you make more rash decisions, more illogical decisions. Obviously, they can still work out, but in general, it's not a sensible way to play. FPL is obviously not a gamble in the same way as poker, but it does sort of give you the same thought process to overreact in the same way and try and get back the points you feel like you've lost, to feel like you're justified, and to chase that rank. Because you convince yourself I shouldn't be 6 million rank. It's the casuals who should be 6 million rank who don't really know what they're doing. But it happens. You can't be overconfident in this game. You can't always expect things to work in your favour because you invest time, effort, and energy every week into listening to pods, creating your own pods, digging around in the data, watching football for eye test advice and all this sort of thing. Doesn't guarantee you a good outcome. So, yeah, I don't think it's good to play on tilt here. I think it's good to remain sensible, test each player on their merits, assess that you've only had 2 weeks of data, but have you seen enough that something's not working? I don't think you have in anyone's case yet. If your players are getting minutes, I think it's fine. Then I ask myself, how many players are there that I don't own at the moment who I really want? There's probably only 2, if I'm being realistic, and I've got 2 free transfers. I can get them both if I want to. I think Semenyo is looking very good, but he last year was a streaky player. Is he now become a bit less streaky, a bit more reliable? Or is he just on a little bit of a hot streak right now that will sort of fade back to a normal pace? Will it be Evan Nilsson who suddenly gets the returns in the next 2 games and not Semenyo? And through 4 game weeks, he'll have 2 good fixtures each in terms of returns. I don't mind having Semenyo. I don't think I like Bournemouth enough to want 2 attackers right now, though. So I made my bed in that way with Evan Nilsson so far. I've got no big urge right now to correct that. It's not like I'm looking at eye test and thinking Evan Nilsson's so deep that he's never going to score. Semenyo's so high running in behind that I really must have him. I'm prepared to accept right now it's more variance rather than me making a bad decision. And that should even itself out. The other one I say is Ismail Assar. I've got a little bit of regret, I think, not picking him over Morgan Rogers from game week 1. But so I went for Rogers because the fixtures were better. The Cole Palmer injury presents me a chance to get Sarr from him. And I'm probably going to go ahead and do that. So I'm prepared, I think, to use one of my 2 free transfers this week to get him in and carry on rolling the other one. Another part of my thought process is to remind myself my pre-season strategy, where I pick certain players. I've already gone through that in this pod. I picked Milenkovic for DEFCON, Lecroix for DEFCON, Elliot Anderson for DEFCON. Those players are achieving that or getting very close to it on a game-by-game basis. I pick certain players for secure minutes. They're delivering in that front. I pick certain players because they were perceived to have good fixtures. I still think those fixtures are good. I haven't seen it. It's not like I've really misread a team so far where I viewed him as a good fixture and they're completely wrong with that interpretation. So these players deserve more time in my team. I've not always been the most patient in FPL over the years. It's something I've tried to improve at in recent years. Might be the wrong strategy for this year. Maybe all the new rules, adaptations to the game might reward those who are a bit more maverick, who are a bit more reactive, who are a bit more open-minded to make regular transfers rather than rewarding those who are patient. We'll see when we've got a whole season of data to find out the best way to have played. Right now, I'm going to retain the patience, I think, with these players and remind myself why I picked them. This next point is quite interesting. Have I seen enough to make me want to change strategy? So I was shared a team earlier this week who started very well. I think they're possibly the best team in the game so far. Hasn't played a chip. And what they seem to have done quite well is to load up on a certain team who may have been considered to have a good fixture. So they had 3 Tottenham players in game week 1. They had Porro, Richarlison and Kudus, who obviously all did quite well in game week 1. This week, they went all eggs in the basket of Chelsea and they played triple Chelsea, including captaining João Pedro, which obviously was an incredible outcome this week with these 15 points against West Ham. So you can look at each game week on its merits and try and identify which you think is the biggest mismatch, what you think is the biggest upside game. For many, that might be United against Burnley this week. It might be carrying on targeting West Ham as the worst defence right now. Can you get points against them? I've just mentioned Crystal Palace. The next 3 could be very good. So is this going to be the strategy now? Identify a game and just use your transfers that week to get the best attacking player in that fixture, captain them. And in the same way, people might have captained Richarlison in game week 1, thinking he had the best fixture against Burnley. Then captain João Pedro this week, he had the best fixture against West Ham. This week, they might captain Brian Mbeumo, thinking he's got the best fixture against Burnley, or Chris Wood because he's playing West Ham. In game week 4, could be someone else. But it's on my mind, at least at the moment, that if I was going to change strategy, that's where I'd be heading. Say it's quite aggressive and you are putting eggs in one basket every week, that you're going to try and maximize your captain every week by bringing a player in who you think has the best game that you're going to captain. And if you own a Haaland or a Salah, you might not barely ever captain them, and some people don't. That doesn't sit right with them to have an asset costing that amount of money they don't captain. But ultimately, the game's about points. You should captain the player you think is going to get you the most points. In theory, that should be the best attacking player versus the worst defensive team. So fair play to that player who's captained Richarlison against Burnley and captained Joel Pedro against West Ham. Be interested to see who that manager captains in game week 3. But rather than play my patient game and picking players on blocks of 4 or 6 weeks, it is sort of swaying on my mind a bit. That maybe because in the past I don't tend to roll too many transfers. Even last year, when obviously the game changed, so we could roll more transfers, I was still very much using my one transfer every week to deal with something. It wasn't always to target the best captain and bring someone in with a particular fixture in mind. It was more, there was always a transfer I needed to make for an injury or to set myself up for the next block. This year I was more keener to roll more transfers and handle things that way. Try and get to game week 6, game week 7 with 4 or 5 transfers. Make it play a mini wildcard, then play the actual wildcard in game week 12. Then you get more transfers for AFCON in game week 16. Then you've got another mini wildcard. And there might have been a way this year with playing wildcards and rolling transfers. Well, you're basically playing wildcards and mini wildcards every 6-7 weeks. And that's kind of where my head was as the best way to play. I say I could have got that wrong. Maybe it is just play what's directly in front of your nose and play one game week at a time. So that, I say, Palace are the big ones for that right now. I've got 2 free transfers. Evan Nilsson's not performing. His data's average. I could move him to Mateta for this Crystal Palace run of Aston Villa away, where Palace are good. Sunderland at home, where expectations will be fine. West Ham away, their defence is in a mess. Palmer's injured. Move him to Ismaila Sarr. I'd have triple Palace for these next 3. I've already got Lucra. I'm not going to do that because that's not the strategy I set out the season with. But I have to be open-minded that you might have to adapt, you might have to change. I've not seen enough yet to make me want to do that, but by game week 6, game week 7, I might have made a decision that I need to change the way I play completely, and that might become the strategy. So I'll be monitoring how Palace do the next couple of weeks and seeing, particularly if there are managers out there that have tripled up, particularly with 2 attacking players, to see what the rewards are. Because I say it's worked for those that have gone big on Chelsea so far. It's worked for those that have gone big on Tottenham so far. Let's see if it works with Man United this week and then Palace moving forward. So, yeah, that's it really for this pod. Something a little bit different. I say my transfer this week is very likely to be Cole Palmer to Ismaila Sarr. I'm going to make one, but only because of an injury, not because of bad performance, not because of a bad game week rank. I'm not going to overreact to that. I'm not going to make sort of tilt decisions, shall we say. You just chalk it up to a bad week. And in 38 weeks, you're always going to have, I think, 4 or 5 at least bad weeks. It's just quite nice if it doesn't happen right at the start. And you always hope to get off to quite a strong start to build from. That hasn't happened for me, but still plenty of time to make up ground, win mini leagues, finish the season well. Hopefully get very close to our finish last year with a 3K overall finish. Still think it's possible. Just need a little bit of good luck because I say in many ways my team is still more than fine. The players are playing minutes. The players are doing quite well on the whole. Just the outcomes aren't matching my expectations and what maybe in some cases what the data is saying. So yeah, just some sort of thoughts on how I'm thinking about my team. If your season hasn't started too well either, you may have different problems to me, and that might mean you might want to play the wild card, or it might mean you might want to take a -4 even to sort yourself out. It's the time to do it, but equally it's a time not to panic, not to overreact. That'll be it for this week. I'll be back next week, probably talking about my free hit because the plan right now is still to free hit game week 4. So I might do a pod with a bit more focus on that. I want to do a pod as well looking at Arsenal, so that might be next week or the week after, but they'll be coming up. Anything else you want me to talk about, to discuss, please leave some comments on this video. Any likes or subscribes would be much appreciated. I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers, so working my way up towards that quite slowly at the moment, but we'll get there soon. And other than that, I'll speak to you in game week 4. Cheers for now. See you later.
do this.